Lawmakers released their first drafts of the new state budget, but despite record revenue, the plans leave a lot of money on the table.
There is still a lot of discussion on the table, so not all the money was spent immediately because we recognize that it's a whole legislature process.
From tax relief to education and pay raises, how the plans from lawmakers could set the stage for budget battles at the Capitol. Thursday was Confederate Heroes Day in Texas, but some lawmakers want to make sure it's the last time for that state holiday.
There is nothing to celebrate about the Confederacy, only lessons to learn about how not to treat our neighbors.
We look at what's fueling the renewed effort to abolish the holiday and why some people believe there's room for compromise. A directive from the governor leads UT to ban TikTok. We dig into the concerns behind the order and why the impact could go beyond blocking entertainment on the app.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. There is only one thing state lawmakers are required to accomplish in the regular session: pass a budget. Now we're getting a new look at what battles could be brewing as lawmakers take on that task. Capitol reporter Monica Madden looks at what we're learning from the first drafts released from the House and the Senate.
Each chamber's budget proposal is more than 1,000 pages, which would look probably something like this. So it's not something that lawmakers just wrote. They've been drafting this for months.
It's preliminary.
The proposed budget includes pay raises for state employees after nearly a quarter of them quit within the last year. Both the House and Senate are proposing $15 billion for school property tax cuts, $2.5 billion for higher education, more than $4 billion for border security, and a nearly 50% increase in funds to public safety and the criminal justice budget.
This is truly a historical, once-in-a-lifetime budgeting session. I think these things are decisions they're able to make that won't just impact the next 2 years, but literally can impact in future generations.
The vice chair of the House Appropriations Committee is quick to point out a lot happens between the first budget proposals and the final version being approved.
There is still a lot of discussion on the table, so not all the money was spent immediately. So now we're just saying, okay, what do we need to fund in order to maintain a vibrant and healthy economy?
The state's budget leaves more than $50 billion up for grabs. There's two possible reasons for that. One, Texas is dealing with one of its biggest budgets ever, largely due to inflation and increased sales tax revenue. The other reason is other lawmakers will likely have pet projects in need of funding, so it leaves some pad room. They have about $188 billion to play with, but the proposals only allocate about $130 billion.
Monica Madden, State of Texas.
The budget drafts mirror some of the priorities Governor Greg Abbott laid out Tuesday when he took the oath of office. During his inaugural address at the state capitol, the governor talked about ways the budget surplus could help Texans and the state's economy for years to come.
To ensure that our booming state can meet the needs of our future, we must work this session to bolster our infrastructure, including the roads that we drive on, the water that we use at home and in our fields, and the ports that we use to ship products around the entire globe.
But the governor also made it clear that tax relief is one of his top priorities.
But make no mistake, that surplus does not belong to government. It belongs to the taxpayers. And we will use that budget surplus to provide the largest property tax cut in the history of the state of Texas.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said cutting property taxes is part of what he called the people's agenda, and his inaugural address put a specific number on the plan for relief.
The Texas Senate will raise your homestead exemption to $70,000, which will save you thousands of dollars over the lifetime of your home, enough to make a difference. And the governor and the speaker and the members will come together and we'll find a way that's long-term property tax relief with billions of dollars from this surplus because you come first. It's your money.
Patrick also called for cutting the state's business franchise tax by 25% this session. There's a lot to dig into, and for insight, we're bringing in Bob Garrett, Austin Bureau Chief for the Dallas Morning News. Welcome.
Thank you.
So there is a budget bill that's lining up pretty well, but you reported on a few key differences. For example, in higher education, there's a split over a plan to freeze tuition at some state universities. We're talking about the differences between the House and the Senate. So what's going on there?
Well, it may not be a total split. It's just as of now, the House is put in language saying they want to do this. This is 6 of the chancellors of the big systems proposed last month, Josh, that if lawmakers would put in nearly $1 billion for a variety of things they need to help at-risk kids succeed in college, help the veterans be able to afford college, patch up some health insurance shortfalls for the employees of universities, then the universities would freeze tuition. And so the House seems to be saluting that, and the Senate is silent on it.
We heard the Lieutenant Governor say the Senate plan would raise the homestead exemption to $70,000, but the House plan didn't get that specific. Is there a divide over the amount of property tax relief we're going to see, maybe?
Well, both of them say in their budgets that they are reserving $15 billion for tax relief. By the way, Governor Abbott and the leaders of both the House and the Senate have been calling this historic tax relief, and I think people should be aware that in 2006 we did $14 billion worth, and adjusted for inflation that would be $20 billion. And of this 15 they're proposing this year, 3.1 billion of it is just to keep going with the 2019 tax cuts. So take those claims of historic tax relief with a grain of salt. So far, though, the Senate is saying they want to do the higher homestead exemption. The House is just saying that may be something we do, but there's a lot of ways to cut property taxes. You know, they can reduce rates as they've done before.
Well, for months, we've been hearing about the record budget surplus that the state might look like it's having, but it seems like lawmakers are leaving a lot of that money on the table, as you kind of alluded to. Why is that?
And we should say the amounts these are the historic amounts, record-breaking amounts. 2 years ago when we came into session, they were looking at an imbalance or carryover or surplus of $11 billion. It's triple that this time. And then there's a lot more because we're expected to have strong revenue growth. And we have all this unspent federal COVID money, and we have our rainy day fund going crazy because of oil and gas revenues going up. The reasons are really that we have these spending caps passed by the voters nearly 45 years ago, and we have, prudence would say you don't spend it all because it's flush times. We have our politics, Josh, where in the Republican Party there are the base is that really against adding any spending, and there's fear. The Republican lawmakers and leaders fear the base, and so all of the above are reasons why we'll leave a lot of money on the table.
You talked about last session. You've covered a lot of sessions. So how does this compare to previous budget proposals? What stands out to you, really?
Well, it is just an amazing amount of money, and I don't know, because they are not willing to just go to the voters and say, we're going to spend some of this, and to do that we have to bust that spending cap from 1978, and we're going to do it a simple majority vote of each chamber. They did that in 2007. Things have changed. They're unwilling to do that, so they're going to do all this complicated, go to the voters in the fall and say, will you approve this, X, Y, Z? And I don't know. That's going to be a messy process. That's what we're looking at. They have a lot of money. It should be easier, but they're going to make it really hard.
Beyond that, what else should people be looking toward in this session?
Well, I mean, really keep your eye on what they do for the basics of state government is funding public schools and keeping our hospitals from closing with health care, our colleges and universities, and our roads. Those are the 4 big things state government does. And instead of looking at all the talk about tax cuts or culture wars, are they making progress on those fronts is the real serious work ahead of the legislature.
All right, a lot can happen in the coming months, right?
You got it.
Bob Garrett, Dallas Morning News. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh.
A state holiday brings backlash at the state capitol.
Racism is still alive in Texas today, and this holiday proves it.
We look at the renewed push to end Confederate Heroes Day in Texas and why some see the need for compromise on the controversial holiday. A new approach to address the backlog of Texans waiting in jail for mental health care. What one county is doing differently to treat people behind bars. An order from the governor leads to a ban on TikTok at the University of Texas. Why it's happening and how similar orders are affecting other parts of the country.